It's Friday, January 13th, and my name is Bill McCamley. I'm a state representative from Las Cruces and Mesilla with your legislative update for the day. First off, school board elections start this week in New Mexico. People are always asking how you can make a difference in your community, especially those folks that are worried about the national situation. Well, education's vital. So find who's running for school board in your area, and if it's your district, please get out there and vote. You have till the first Tuesday in February. So the main thing I wanted to talk about today before we start the legislative session next Tuesday is tax reform. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, and this is a really complicated topic. So this might take a little longer than I normally do on these things, and I apologize in advance, but it's really important for everybody. So what do we have? We have in New Mexico a gross receipts tax. When you buy something, either a good like a book or food in a restaurant, or a service like a massage or getting your car fixed, the gross receipts tax was set up to where we would tax everything and use that money to pay for things like education at the state level, and cities and counties would pay for police and fire and libraries at the city level. But it would be a low rate because we would tax everything all the time. The problem is over the last 25 years, different groups have been able to lobby for carve-outs over time. So businesses would say we don't need this, or this service would say please don't tax us on this, or the food tax was taken off 10 years ago because of arguments about the poor, and more carve-outs meant that the base was shrinking, which means we still have to make the same amount of money, so the rate goes up. And this is a big problem in Las Cruces, where it's 8.24%, and it's very higher on the rest of the state as well for two reasons. Number one, business after business, economic development group after economic development group has told us the complexity of this thing, as well as the high rate, makes it really hard to start or expand or build or bring in a business. And that's tough for the state where we need good jobs. The second reason is something I'm really worried about long term, is more and more companies, because they don't want to pay for health care or retirement, are moving to, quote, self-employment jobs, where when you work for a company, you're technically working for yourself, which means you're providing a service, which means you're supposed to pay the GRT. Think Uber drivers. If you drive for Uber, you are set a rate by Uber on how much you can charge per ride. But you're supposed to pay 5% of the income you make in the state income tax, and another 8% in a GRT that you can't make up by raising the price because Uber controls that. So you're basically paying a 13% income tax, and that's really rough. So there's been an effort over the past few years to try to get rid of a lot of those exemptions, lower the rate down, and broaden the base. And this has a bunch of different aspects to it, and here's some of them. There's hundreds of different corporate carve-outs, so boxing matches, small airplane manufacturers. My favorite is the upholsterer's tax credit. So if someone upholsters your furniture, they don't have to charge you a tax. And these are all things that have happened over time to, like I said, shrink the base and raise the rate. Asking nonprofits to pay. Right now, they don't pay a gross receipts tax. Some kind of voluntary internet tax. I mean, right now, if you buy on Amazon, you don't have to pay a tax, and that's great for you, but it sucks for the small business that is competing with that in town. And when you buy something before where the city and county would get a little bit of money to pay for police and cops and libraries and homeless shelters, now they're not getting it. And the state's not getting that money either to help pay for things like education and roads. So the really big one is the food tax, right? It's such a huge part of that base. It's very consistent in that people buy food over time, and you can't really buy groceries online, so there's no reason to you don't have to worry about internet taxes competing with that. And that's where cities get most of their money, from the GRT. So if you were to raise, for instance, the income tax, that goes to the state, not the cities. So if you were to do this reform without food, cities might not get the money they need to do all the things that they do for your everyday life. This is a problem, though, in a lot of ways that the Catholic Church and other groups have pointed out. It is very regressive. People spend more money on food at the lower levels as a portion of their overall budget than rich people do. So if you put a tax back on food, which is something that everybody needs to live, right? You're actually hurting the poor more. So we've tried to explore ways of offsetting that by saying if you have a SNAP card, even when your SNAP benefits run out, you wouldn't have to pay tax on food if you ran it at the register. And there's a couple of different tax rebates where we could give you that money back in a tax rebate that you would normally spend on food as a tax rebate to make up for that for certain income brackets. The problem is that's really hard to make work, right? Because not everybody that's eligible for SNAP applies for it. Not everybody applies for a tax return. And there's some real worries at the federal level about what's going on with SNAP. There's real worries at the state level because the governor has overseen some real funny business with SNAP where people weren't getting their benefits before. And so my whole thing on this, because I'm not out to screw the poor over here, that is not why I was elected to do my job, was to find ways of making this work. And the group I've been using for that is called New Mexico Voices for Children. They're a group out of Albuquerque. I trust them as probably the best group that fights for poor people. And we had a really good long conversation yesterday about this. And they listened and they were great in asking questions and they looked at the data, but they couldn't support a food tax. So I can't support a food tax as part of a package. That being said, it's really important that we try other things. Can we make something work just for junk food? Are there other ways we can try to broaden that base and lower the rate in other different ways? And we're going to keep fighting for that because lowering this GRT is really important. There's also two other reasons I think are important. Number one, we have failed as a state with a very complicated tax system that's still regressive because we don't charge more income tax to rich people than poor people. It's a very flat tax, which means poor people get hit more. The other thing is I've been working with a couple of Republicans on this. A guy named Jason Harper, who's a representative out of Albuquerque, and a guy named Ryan Gleason, who's worked for Pete Domenici, and he's now working as a staffer for some of the House Republicans. And these are two really honest, hardworking, well-meaning gentlemen who want to get stuff done. And I think it is really important that we, as public officials, we fight to try to find bipartisan ideas that work. And we fight to try to not be lazy in how we think and really expand our viewpoints and try to make stuff work. And these are the sorts of issues where that's really important for us to move forward and make our state better. So once again, I apologize for this being a little longer than normal, but as always, if you have questions, comments, or concerns on these or any other issues, I would love to hear from you. Thanks. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and I'll be back at you when the session starts in a couple days. Bye.